everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Pallas. For this week's show, we are talking about the 28th Amendment and equal rights, and we have a phenomenal guest. Thank you for joining us, and I am looking forward to all of your questions and comments. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you have a comment or a question, although it only works like 30% of the time, but try. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. I want to give a big shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. And if you would like to support the show, you can go to sherrypallas.com. There you will find literally dozens of ways. Just go to the support tab and you'll see them all. Thanks in advance. And thank you for welcoming us into your home and joining the conversation. I appreciate you all. Okay, enough housekeeping. Let's meet our guests and get smarter. Ani Zonneveld is a writer, singer, songwriter, founder, and president of Muslims for Progressive Values. MPV's mission is to inculcate a culture rooted in human rights in Muslim societies. Ani is a vigorous supporter of freedom of expression and of conscience and women's and LGBTQ+ rights. She promotes these values at the United Nations by challenging human rights abuses in the name of Islam and by offering an inclusive understanding based on universal human rights and justice. Hello, Ani. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has. Thank you so much for coming on. Well, when we met last week, you blew my mind, finding out that equal rights is still not ratified into our Constitution. Let's start at the beginning. What is the Equal Rights Amendment?
So 100 years ago, a group of women from the Presbyterian Church got together. Alice Paul was one of them, and they basically declared that they needed to advocate for the 28th Amendment and to basically incorporate the word woman into the Constitution, because as we all know, the Constitution was drawn up by white men, property owners particularly, and everybody else was subhuman. So when the women got together, one of the most important and pressing issue for them was the right to vote. And when that got ratified, when women did get the right to vote, they also included, now we have to move on to other rights. And so that included abortion rights and various other domestic violence issues. So issues that still plague us to this day. So I was in Seneca Falls last week to celebrate the 100th year anniversary of the launching of this effort. And unfortunately, we still do not have the 28th Amendment signed into law at the federal level. One of the requirements is that 3/4 of the states, that means 38 states, have to ratify it at the state level. That has taken place. And yet the archivists have refused to publish the amendments as the 28th Amendment. So as an advocate, I've been working with several umbrella organizations like ERA Coalition, Justice Revival, and other faith-based organizations to really draw attention to the need to have the 28th Amendment ratified. And basically, the language is very simple. And I'm putting it in lay terms because it's obviously much more legalistic, but basically it's to say that non-discrimination on the basis of sex. That's it. And, some states have ratified it, others haven't. And therefore, we feel that Biden should have instructed the archivists to publish it as ratified. Trump had notified the archivists not to publish
Of
the
course.
28th Amendment, and Biden had promised to do that within the first 100 days of his term, and he has not done that. Now he's promising to do it in the second term, which we say, you know what? If you actually use an executive order in order to command, ask the archivist to publish it, all of us, women's rights group, Generation Z, all of us will be backing, putting all our efforts into him getting reelected. But I'm not sure what his political strategists are saying, that they're just stringing us along and claiming that, we'll do it in the second term, in the first few 100 days of the second term. And we're like, no, we're not buying that.
So why won't the archivists move? Why won't they take the plunge and do this if they have the states covering everything?
One of the snag is that the states had to be ratified within a certain time period, and the time period has expired when some of the states had ratified it, and that was the basis for the archivists not publishing it. So to circumvent that and to close that loophole, so to speak, there are two pieces of legislations right now that has proposed, one by Cory Bush in the House and one by Gillibrand in the Senate. And they both legislations are proposing to do away with that deadline. In other words, so it's just another level of legalistic maneuvers, procedures in order to have women and others as equal citizens of the United States.
I kind of feel like over the last 100 years, they've thrown us pennies. Like, we gave you the vote, shut up. We gave you body autonomy, shut up, without really going in and saying, no, you are actually equal. They won't go that far. And because of that, we've just had our rights, our body autonomy taken away. Because of that, LGBTQ people's rights are in jeopardy also. So one of the things I thought was really interesting, and you and I talked about this over smoothies, but when I started doing research for the show, just putting in the 28th Amendment into YouTube, Gavin Newsom's all over it. Literally at the top.
For the wrong reasons, yes.
For the wrong reasons, exactly.
That's incredible.
So he wants to go ahead and just take away the Equal Rights Amendment and replace it with gun issues. Which I'm for gun legislation, but not to the detriment of my own soul. I mean, to go just to swipe it away. Newsom better be expecting some information and some communication from me shortly, because I was like, oh, we're going to talk. And so with Biden,
sense into him and his team, it's just ridiculous. I mean, California ratified the ERA in 1972. So, but just because it's been decades ago, it does not mean that he's not aware of it, because his team definitely, I mean, that's in the forefront for many of us, and his team knows that. So it's really weird that he's been advocating for the 28th Amendment, which has nothing to do with the ERA. And it is almost to say that, no, that doesn't count. The ERA amendment doesn't count. And so, just start over, pick another number. It's like, no.
Well, and I was thinking as I was going through this, like, wait a minute, guns already have more rights than me. Now you want to go ahead and do a constitutional amendment before my rights.
Yeah. There is an organization called Equal Means Equal, and it's started by this woman, Kamala Lopez. She's an actress here in Los Angeles, and her response to Gavin's mail on his version of the 28th Amendment is like, it's the 29th, stand in line.
Exactly. You are not going to supersede us. I mean, I love, well, I don't love, but I appreciate when I have differences with the leaders that I elected. Because it helps show that you shouldn't support everything they do. There are problems. There are definite problems with Biden and Newsom, and this is at the top of the list. So right now, what is standing in the way of this progressing? Is it by not jumping and doing an executive order on this? Are there senators and congressmen that are fighting this? What is the objection now? Is it just the archivist?
No, the archivists won't move unless a superior, President Biden, instructs her to do that. That's number
Wow.
one. Number two, the two legislations in the House and the Senate, in order for that to pass, which is to do away with the deadline, that's not going to happen because, for example, the House is dominated by the Republicans, and they know the ERA is going to empower women in ways that they don't like, right? Like, women's.
Oh, they're pissed off at Barbie, so no, they're not going to do that.
And and the Senate, it has to pass, majority or 60 votes. So it's going to be tough for them for the legislations to pass in both houses. So we're not really sure what the path forward is. It's just probably us citizens raising awareness, because like you didn't know, and you're pretty in the loop of things.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do not know that this is an issue that has not been resolved, that has still not signed into law. And I think it's really appalling that we, as the country that claims to be the moral compass,
right,
and for me, I do a lot of work internationally at the United Nations, and when I look at some of the constitution of these other countries in developing countries or countries in the global south, their stance on women's rights or the rights of their citizens is so much more advanced than ours, and it's really pathetic.
Yeah.
So we really need to shame the American government on this, because I know I'm being shamed by those who don't want women's rights to move forward in their respective countries. They always say, "Oh, Ani, why don't you just go back to your own country and clean up your own backyard?" So
this is your country now.
Yeah. So it's like, so I'm like, okay, I get that, but that's just a lame excuse, right? So, I bulldoze my way into defending.
Well, something like that prevents change.
Yeah.
It prevents change. It shuts you down, and it's total bullshit. I mean, how insecure do you have to be to say that the person next to you or the person who bared you, gave birth to you, is less equal than you? I mean, it's a form of insecurity. We're seeing it across the world right now, which is also why fascism is taking hold. It's also why fundamentalism is going crazy again. It's all a bunch of insecurities when, I mean, we're a third world country with technology at this point. If our people are not equal, beyond race, beyond just the basics of sex and all of that, there is no freedom in this country if that's not a base of our foundation.
So what's really pitiful is that I see the consistency and in this insecurity, like you say, but a lot of that is also justified in the name of religion, right? No matter what religion it is. So you have your Christian sect, you have your Muslims, you have your Jewish, you have your whatever faith tradition that allows you to use faith language to justify your misogynistic, homophobic, prejudicial attitudes. And what's really scary now in the United States is how religion is trumping, sorry to use the word, but it's trumping our secular state, or the separation of religion and state. And the fact that, in the recent case, the Supreme Court decided that this woman who claims that she doesn't want to create a website for same-sex weddings, which first of all was even a case because she didn't have such a request.
Made it up. Yeah,
totally
made it up.
Yeah, number one. And number two, and the fact that the Supreme Court, the majority of them, decided that no, she had the right to discriminate as a business. And that's really going down the rabbit hole, the slippery slope that we thought we had overcome a long time ago as citizens of the United States, where we're supposed to be equal regardless of race, religion, sex, what have you, right? But clearly the ERA, since it's not passed, it doesn't protect its citizens equally.
Wow. So, I mean, again, throwing us pennies over the last. Okay, quick question. When did it expire?
I can't remember.
Was it decades ago, or was
Yeah, it
it
was decades
something?
ago. It was
Okay.
decades ago. Yeah.
So, because it wasn't done then, they're just still sitting on it saying,
Yeah.
we're just not going to do it.
Right. Right.
And then they're
And
chipping,
the
where
most,
they threw us pennies, now they're chipping away at everything. They're taking
yeah.
the pennies back.
And some of the states that have ratified, they, in this current nature, that they, some of the states that did ratify, they would, there's no way that would have been ratified in this day and age, because it's become so misogynistic, particularly on abortion rights, etc. And the last state to have ratified was Nevada. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. And
and
they're
that
going
was
backwards too
a few
now,
years ago. Yeah.
dropping things. I'm so angry.
Yes.
So what do we need to do to fix this? Is this something that everybody who sees this show needs to immediately send their congressman and congressperson and senator emails, calling them, getting in their faces,
Yeah.
doing nothing? What can
Yeah.
we do for all of this?
Well, I think people watching this should call their congressmen, women, to vote yes on those legislations. That do away with the deadline. I can share that information with you. Maybe you can share that with your constituency, with your
Definitely.
audience. But I do think that the progressives need to wake up, and mobilize this and make this into a real issue in the next election cycle. Seriously, I think this is the moment for Biden. If he wants our vote, or whoever is going to be running as a Democratic ticket, if whoever wants their vote, they
Yeah.
better get the ERA ratified and published by the archivist.
Well, and Black women got Biden elected. It's
Yeah.
time to call in what they need. The Republicans call in their corporate donors. I want to call in everybody who's out there, the average everyday Jane and everyone out there. I mean, does this just cover sex discrimination, or are there other arms to this that it would also? Because I know that Obama signed the Fair Pay Act when he first got in, although a lot of people aren't addressing that either, and the abortion rights. So with this amendment, would it cover just, I mean, really all of the rights
Every
that they're
aspect,
taking?
every issue. So, for example, the 14th Amendment did not cover protect women from violence, domestic violence. And even Judge Alito actually made that statement and said, well, 14th Amendment does not protect women from
Yes, he
violence.
did.
And a lot of the domestic violence issue falls in between the cracks because we don't have the protection, the equal rights protection. And it's really depending on the state.
Wow.
Obviously, in the state of California, we have, protections, but in many other states, just because we're good here in California, at least I am, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be fighting for the women who are not protected. So that's my position on this. And so
And the
so
states are even fighting allowing them guns.
yeah, so exactly. So, for example, there are states where they can issue an ex-partner who has been proven to be violent with a gun, and a lot of women, sadly, are killed or harmed by somebody they know, and are partners or ex-partners. And so so ERA would actually close all of those loops at all levels.
So I can see why the conservatives are fighting it.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're trying to conserve, because it's not. It's
The
not the right one
patriarchy.
to conserve. Yeah, that's true. The patriarchy.
The patriarchy.
Duh.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, it really shows the hypocrisy of the pro-lifers, because if you cannot protect women, if they are not equal, then no one is really pro-life, being that we give the life.
Yeah.
If we are being shot, if we are being abused by, any of the partners in our lives,
Yeah.
that just, I mean, we matter.
Yeah.
To say that the laws say that we don't necessarily, because this hasn't been enacted, what is just, I said, when you told me the other day, I started going around to people going, can you believe this? And everybody's like, no.
Yeah.
How is this something that hasn't already been done? And how is it that in this day and age, in 2023, that this is something that we have to fight again? I'm
Well,
so glad we're talking about
I'll
this.
tell you another thing that you're going to be shocked about.
Oh,
In
dear.
the state of California, we don't have marriage age for boys and girls at 18. So you can be married off at 16 with parental consent. So what's happening is that in the insular communities, the conservative communities like Muslim, Christian, Jewish, that are very, very conservative, if you are, you tend to get married off if you've been raped or you've had illicit sex, right?
Or if
So
they're
most
poor.
of the time sorry?
Or if they're poor.
Yeah. And most of the time they're being married off with quote unquote parental consent.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, 98% of the time, the young women are being married off to adult men. So in the state of California, this is happening, right? Now, if you're a lesbian child or gay child, you're definitely going to be married off. So if you've been outed, for example, by mistake or
Wow.
intentionally, you're going to be married off quickly because, it's sort of like, it's supposed to cure you from your lesbianism or gay, being
Well, at least
queer,
hide
right?
it. And at least hide it from society.
Yeah. So that's also what this is happening in California. And it's been impossible for us to have that marriage age raised to 18. It's pathetic. So, and if you are married off, most likely this is a abusive relationship. And if you're under 18 as a girl or a boy, you can't go to a shelter because you can only go to shelter if you're 18.
Yeah.
And up. So, I mean, it's crazy.
I believe that Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and West Virginia just stood by their age of consent for marriage with parental approval at 14.
Wow.
Yeah. Georgia was the other one.
Yeah, there are a few states that have changed and ratified their state laws to 18 with no exceptions, but the no exception ones are very rare. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, purity culture, Christian purity culture totally enables that. It justifies, it applauds a young girl and an older man. That's a lot of the support for Trump and all of that, especially with Epstein.
Well, there's also, I mean, I don't know if you saw this report, but there was a full, deep, even a documentary actually about the Hasidic Jews in New York, how they also been practicing child marriage within their, like I said, the insular communities, right? So that's also happening. So it is really across the board.
Well, and Mary was supposedly 14 and Joseph was in his 40s. So this has been going on for a while and being justified.
Yeah.
It's time to come into this
century
era. and start giving. I mean, we have a woman vice president. We had a woman speaker of the House, which legislatively has backfired on us. It has initiated a lot of the fears from the conservative men wanting to tramp us down and prevent it from going further.
Well, even the conservative women also are on the bandwagon, right?
Yeah,
because for them, like, they can't imagine a woman president, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I
That's
saw
so
something the
crazy.
other day that I absolutely loved, and I'm going to forget her name, but the woman that was against feminism back in the late 60s, early 70s, railed against it. Christian out there saying, we are subjected to our husbands, all of that. Just found out her daughter is a lesbian and married. So it's like, out of the mouths of babes,
Yep.
progress will not stop, no matter how hard they fight it, no
And
matter
yeah,
what bigoted beliefs they have.
yeah.
Our children are going to be. In fact, I have a really good story on that. I mentioned Paula Stone Williams the other day when we met, and I spoke with her about all of this, and she was telling me that Chick-fil-A, which is known for being anti-LGBT, closed on Sundays,
Yeah.
Bible Belt, all this stuff. They now have a DEI division and diversity, inclusion, and equity, or had it
Inclusion
all
and
wrong.
equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, "What?" And she said, "Yes, the grandfather, bigoted, the parents bigoted, but the children that are now starting to take over, they wanted the DEI, and they've actually increased their profits by doing so, even after spending all this. So it's gonna happen. It's just whether or not people's hair gets pulled out in the meantime."
Right. I just wonder how there's a lot of corporations that have done the DEI thing, but I think it's also a lot of it is just like, a cover, a facade. So it'll be interesting to see, how serious it is.
Well, in this day and age when woke is being demonized, I mean, whenever I see someone going against diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's like, who are you?
Yeah.
Golden rule here, people. How could you
I
even rebut
know, right?
it? I mean, this is just the basic,
I
and you're
know.
fighting this as something bad. And that
Yeah.
scares me more than anything
Yeah.
because, we can't hide who we are. We can't, we are women, we are out there. Trans people are trying to just justify their own lives, and we're all fighting for this inclusiveness that so many want to be exclusive for.
And it's very strange, because if people are supposedly religious, they should really go back to the heart of religion, and that is that, there's the spirit of God in every one of us. And so I'm like, you can't get more inclusive and egalitarian than that, right? So
Yeah,
it's just phenomenal how it just contradicts everything about God and spirituality.
it is hypocrisy. It's the height of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So I just had a question and my mind went blank. The fact that we have to make this a law, I think, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It should be implied in just our human nature. The fact that we have to make this legal so that we do have body autonomy, that we don't get married off as children. I mean, my mom was an evangelical, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I was 15, and she brought home someone from the fruit stand. And so I was 15, and she was already trying to marry me off to some guy at the fruit stand, and we were both so uncomfortable. She literally brought him home.
Mm.
So the sexualization of women starting at puberty puts all of this into it and then makes the men control us. It's
Yeah.
this self-fulfilling prophecy of whoredom. And like,
So let me,
whoredom, yeah.
yeah. So what I find that a lot of times it's the women who are the ones that perpetuate the misogyny and the harmful cultural or religious practices, right? So
That just kills me.
in the work that I do, when I look at the family unit structure, it's the moms and the aunties that, for example, insist on, having female genital mutilation and cutting, right?
Oh,
It's
wow.
not the husband, it's not the father. And so it's for the women, it's a way to
Wow.
carry on with this harmful tradition. And so, I was raised rather progressively in my Muslim family and Muslim tradition. But the misogynistic one in my family, or within to my parents, was my mother. My father was the one who was liberating and uplifting and pushing me to
Wow.
study hard and never
Wow.
discuss marriage. Always like, Ani, dream, make your life useful, right? So he was always the one that pushed us, regardless of whether it was the boys or the girls. But it was my mom who was the one that instilled some of the misogynistic values within our culture. So at a young age, I already knew that I was a feminist. I mean, I remember the moment like it was yesterday. So, so
What happened?
it's interesting, right? So, and I see that consistently. The example with your mom, I see that consistently in the work that I do. It's and when you do have misogynistic attitudes from men and boys, well, it's because mothers are the one in the traditional communities. It's the
Wow.
mothers that raise the child, right? So regardless if it's a girl or a boy, you're going to be raised in this misogynistic belief system. Yeah.
Wow. So when did you realize you were a feminist? What happened?
Oh, I was 12 years old, and I was practicing the call for prayer, which is the azan, because I always found it very beautiful. And so I was practicing it in my room, and the door was ajar. And my mom comes running to me to the room. Stop, 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 stop. I'm like, what? What did I do? I'm like, I was like really taken aback. And this is, girls are not allowed to do the call for prayer. And I'm like, oh, that's whack. I didn't say that to my mom, right? Because,
Yeah.
Asian, you don't speak back to your mom. So I was saying it to myself. Well, that's really whack. So I knew right then and there. That's like, yeah, whatever. I'm not buying this
Yeah,
bias
right?
against girls.
Ugh, it's just ridiculous, and it's perpetuated so much harm. I'm so
And
glad you
what's
said the
really
crap.
funny? Yeah, and what's really funny is that now that I started Muslims for Progressive Values, and there are times when we have community gatherings and we have prayers, I'm the one that does the call for prayer, and I'm the one that leads men and women in prayer,
Nice.
and trans and LGBT people in prayer. And then a couple of summers ago, before COVID, the Los Angeles Gay Men's Chorus invited faith communities to sing with them for their annual summer concert. And so I did, and they asked me to do the call for prayer as
I
the
love
opening of the
it.
second act.
I love it. That is so awesome.
Yeah, what a circle, right?
Right. I mean, just taking off of those fundamentalism and saying we're not going to put up with this anymore. I mean, since I was a child too, I kept going, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Why would we do those things? And yeah, and you are actually doing it out there. That is so amazing.
yeah.
High five. So, in our churches, in our politics, in our homes, I was just thinking last night when my son got taller than me, and he actually tried to ground me one day. And he would say things in high school like, I am the man of this house. And I would go, yeah, okay.
You never know who he's talking to.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Good
But I
try.
was thinking last night about how that ever could have happened, where that influence came from, where he would have gotten those thoughts, because that wasn't the way he was raised. I mean, I was a
Mhm.
single mom. I was out there in the corporate world. I was doing
Yeah.
all of this stuff. The patriarchy was damn near demonized in my home. And then all of a sudden, he was thinking that that was the natural flow of life. So I think that even with our kids as a young age, I mean, you were 12 saying this is crap. He was 15 going, no, this is the way it should be.
Mhm. Yeah.
So again, I think a lot of it is, it breaks my heart when women perpetuate these types of things, because I believe that we are the lovers of life. We are to give love and acceptance and all of these things. So when women perpetuate the patriarchy, it just makes me especially sick. But so changing that again, I didn't even perpetuate the patriarchy, so he had to have gotten it from school or church or something to that effect, that where he was told or assumed that he could just take charge.
Yeah, for sure. And it's and especially when you're a 15-year-old boy, I don't think it takes much to
Right?
let me try that out,
Yeah,
on my
right.
mom, right? Because it's that rebel age, right?
Yeah, I had a wrought iron skillet going, this says otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's regardless of society, the patriarchy is so rampant and so stubborn. It's incredible. And I see it across societies, whether it be in Europe, whether it be here, or in Africa or Southeast Asia, wherever. You always, the patriarchy is really very toxic. And I think that, so what, for me, okay, the problem is the problem, and I always like to dwell more, put time more and effort into the problem solving and how to
Yes.
prevent that, right? So one of the things that we started doing in Burundi is, in partnership with my imam partner there, we implemented this gender equality, positive masculinity program in the Islamic schools, high schools. And so when the imams are teaching about girls and women's rights, about their right to decide who to marry, when to marry, if they want to marry, about child rearing, how many children, if they want to have children, to choose their partner, all the stuff that it's given to us by the Quran, right? To speak in faith terms. And but the patriarchy is undermining all of that, right?
Yeah.
So when you have the imam, a religious leader, male religious leader, teaching girls and boys about, no, these are girls' rights and women's rights, and you have to adhere
Yes.
to that, and total equality and egalitarian values, and teaching young men about positive masculinity. And what we're doing is to also teach young men positive masculinity in the presence of girls, so the
Mm,
girls will know,
perfect.
that's
Yeah.
the kind of guy I would want to be married to, not some misogynistic,
Yeah.
guy, right? So that's what we started implementing. So I'm super excited to see how attitudes will change in the next few months. So
Could
that's
change a
kind of like,
generation.
yeah. So that's the kind of stuff like I like to do. Is what's the next generation going to look like? Forget about the old folks, but what's the next generation? How can we impact the next generation? So that's what I.
Well, and the patriarchy goes against nature. I mean, it goes against the male needing to woo the female, and all the things that we see across nature. Um, Humans have it different. It's backwards from
Yeah,
what we see from the rest of the planet.
yeah,
And I really think that happened through bullying, through physical force, to say this is what, and to put it into those terms, you can really see the patriarchy as barbaric.
yeah,
That they have to force this on us, as opposed to being healthy and saying, you do you, boo. It's no, we have to control you. Again, back to the insecurity, because
yeah,
nothing else in nature works that way. I mean, the men really have to step it up and woo the women, and the women are like,
yeah.
or not, come here now, and very demanding. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking of the lioness biting the
Right.
groin of the lion. She wanted to mate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
because of fear, because of all of that, we've got things opposite of nature, and we're not going to progress as humanity unless we get that realigned.
Yeah. And it's going to be, it's like you're a reverend and you have gone through your spiritual journeys.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of people that are still, although the good news is that the majority of Americans are spiritual rather than adhering to a particular
And religious,
orthodoxy.
yeah,
Yeah, thank goodness.
yeah,
So,
exactly. I was
yeah,
just stating those statistics last night. It is more people are spiritual now than they are religious.
yeah. And which because it makes more sense, and it is, I think Sinead O'Connor When she passed away. She just passed away a few days ago. But one of her famous quotes is that um, religion screwed up God, something to that effect. Yeah. And it was so true.
Yeah. I mean, the title of my book is We Have Ruined God. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
God is our scapegoat and blesser of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And taking that power from God is where the patriarchy got its stance,
Yeah.
which led us to not having equal rights, which led us to an aggressive, volatile God. All of that was from really negative masculinity that also subjected women to be dismissive my words are all going together, to be subjected to the male form as
Yeah.
opposed to being equal, the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
That hierarchy has hurt so many, not only women, but men also.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah, using God is as old as humankind,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, using God to control your constituency, to control period. Yeah.
So, what can we do? Is there anything else we can put our feet on to get this passed? Should we be listening to schools? And God, I don't want to sound like Ron DeSantis and say we should monitor people's schooling, but is it going into school based, like you said? Is it starting young like that, to where equal rights are subliminally, if nothing else, positioned to say men are superior and women are inferior?
Well, I got an email today from a coalition organization about a Supreme Court case where Alabama passed, um, is allowing for a charter public school, Catholic charter public school funding. So that's really crossing the line because
Yeah.
that's unconstitutional. So we're challenging that along with other faith organizations. So I think the way religion is being used, unfortunately, in the United States is really detrimental to all sorts of rights. It's unconstitutional in the way it's being utilized, and
So
it's
it's got to be
harmful.
religion. It's got
Yeah,
to be religion
it
that
is.
that
It's all rooted in religion
wow.
and perpetuating the patriarchy, perpetuating the male domination in religion, and I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's exhausting.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, especially to say that if God um, creates lesser beings, again,
Yeah,
God gave us the birthright. God
yeah,
gave us, the fact that we are going to fulfill the world. Um, and then to say that that's lesser, it's got to be insecurity. It's got to be insecurity. And it's the same reason why they use God to justify their motives, because they're insecure about him too.
yeah.
And
I do think as far as what we need to do, I urge everyone to Google ERA amendment and the two legislations that has been introduced, and depending on what state you are, to look up, if your senator and legislators have not signed on to it, for them, call, share, and have people call in to have them support the passage of those legislations. But I think it's people power right now.
yeah.
That's number one. And number two, whenever uh, when the election cycle starts, towards the end of the year and next year, when you attend these town hall meetings of your legislators, ask them, what's the status of the ERA amendment? Why are you not voting for it if they haven't? But even for my legislators who have voted, I'm just going to raise that issue anyway, so that they know this is an important issue. And so I think that it's going to be people power right now, because they want to do it. Legislators, president won't do anything unless they're pressured to do that.
Well, and I'm going to be writing letters, especially to the California legislators. I plan on getting in Gavin's face, and being that I'm so tall, we could be eye to eye. and writing a letter to Biden. I mean, doing something, following it up with emails, following it up with calls, because I cannot have the next generation have less rights than I do.
Yep.
I mean, we've already lost rights in the last year that were promised would never be taken away. The fact that these fundamentalists, these conservatives, are trying to inflict religious beliefs in a country that prevented that, in a constitution that prevented that, is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And it's more than just equal rights for women. It's equal rights for everybody, because if someone is not free, then no one is free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Amen to that.
Amen. Well, I've got some banners to show. I grabbed your website. So everybody listening, go to Ani's website, sign up so you can be part of her newsletter, and you can keep in touch. Also, Google Muslim for Progressive Values. That is her organization.
Yes.
And that's where she's doing all of her phenomenal works. And I am now a full-fledged groupie of. And the Seneca rally was held by Generation Ratify, right?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
what I
right.
gathered from?
Yeah.
So look
it's the
up
kids,
that.
the young kids are taking on the mantle, which is taking on the baton and running with it.
And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so any final words, and where can people find you?
Well, I think the Muslims for Progressive Values website is the most active, because we have staff, doing our thing. My website needs some working. It's not updated. I just haven't had time, just doing my work. You know how that is. I mean, maintaining that personal stuff is a job unto itself. And
right.
So, yeah. But if you're on MPV, there's a monthly newsletter, which I urge you to sign on to. This month, August, will be our 16th birthday. So it's been a slog. And, but yeah, I can't believe we're still here and growing and doing well. It has been a really tough journey, especially the first 7 years. But I think people are starting to understand the importance of the work. Non-Muslims understand, they are challenging the misogynistic, the homophobic, the prejudicial attitudes from within. And this is particularly stark right now because about a month and a half ago, over 150 imams, male religious leaders in the United States and a few in Canada signed on to a position statement that was very homophobic and transphobic. And so then, I read a response to that because it was just like theologically,
bullshit.
Not comprehensive, it was just theologically, you're lying, you left this out, you left that out, just so many good things that they left out. But obviously, right, to usurp their patriarchal, what they did was usurp their religious authority, and we don't have such a thing in Islam, right? So I was able to debunk that. But then non-Muslims are starting to come around and realize the importance of the work that we do, which for the longest time people just didn't get. And it's like, why, you're a Muslim? Why don't you have a headscarf?
Right. Well, one of the reasons I love you is because you're targeting the Muslim side and I'm targeting the Christian side. So hopefully we can work together to get them both. Smash the patriarchy, all of those things, because I think, especially based on this conversation, it's the churches that need to be held accountable. And then we can see the growth from there. So everybody out there, churches, politics, bringing them together to stop them from being together. Because we have to have that separation, because this is why. Well, Ani, thank you so very much. This was a wonderful conversation, and keep us posted. I'm
Will do.
definitely, you and I are going to be working
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but yeah, keep
Yeah.
me posted. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sherry.
Have a great day. I'm going to
You
send you
too.
on back, and I'll see you in a minute.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, so you've got marching orders. You need to go out there. You need to contact your elected officials. You need to work with your church to make sure that what they are doing is based in equality, not division. If you want to work with Muslims, to go there. If you want to work in your Jewish community, go there. You want to work in the Christian community. There's problems with the patriarchy in all of those faiths. So no one is immune from this. And so I need you to get out there and actually start doing something. Put your feet on the ground, put your hands to the paper, and get this done. Because again, if one person is not free, none of us are free, and it will happen to you eventually. I love you. Have a wonderful week. And as always, walk in love. Mwah!